All right, so the next topic is on trans medicalism. So again, it's going to be the same process. The debate will be about maybe like an hour, and then we'll go to Q&A. So if you guys have questions, tag politically provoked who your question is addressed to, and we will get to them. I guess we can see at the end if you guys are up to having a couple pop-on questions. All right, so let's see. Rose, do you want to go first with opening statements?
Yeah, so do you have the 3 prompts we talked about there on your side?
I sent them to Brittany, yeah.
I can read out the first one otherwise.
Yeah, go ahead.
You just sent it on one of my failed accounts?
Yeah, one of the dead ones. Brittany 3.0. Or is it 2.0? No, it's not 2.0. 3.0 is too recent.
All right.
Do you have them?
So, yeah, the first point of this discussion is, are sex and gender the same thing, or are they 2 distinct concepts that have been societally conflated or correlated? My stance on this is that sex and gender are 2 distinct sort of like facets of like an individual's person, so to say. Gender refers to more of like a social role, more of, one's expression, one's identification when it comes to how they fit into the gendered roles and expectations that exist in contemporary society. While sex has a lot more to do with the physiology of an individual when it comes to like where they would be identified as on the sort of like sex bimodal distribution, so to say. And it is not just myself that claims that this is the case. There is a number of incredibly reputable scientific and social organizations which also affirm the validity of transgender people as a whole, and also recognize the distinction between sex and gender. Can name just a few of them right now: the American Psychological Association, the Human Rights Campaign, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the United Nations, the United Kingdom's National Health Service, just to name a few of the medical institutions that recognize the strong distinction between sex and gender. And this is a distinction that we must recognize fundamentally, because it gives us value when it comes to analyzing and understanding the plights and the mechanisms that go behind the existence of transgender individuals in society, and the mode of identification, and the best way to just societally treat them, which at the end of the day just boils down to ensuring that they have access to the all the humanitarian facilities, and just treating them as human beings pretty much. So yeah, that's going to be my opening statement.
All right, Paul.
Okay, well, so in regards to that, are sex and gender different? Okay, well, let's look at it this way. There are biological realities to people's gender. There are socially constructed realities to people's gender. So there's male and female, clearly biological, and it's a bimodal distribution, which is, I would say, clearly bimodal enough that you might as well call it binary, because the intersex conditions are, we can get into that. But the idea that fundamentally, I would say, calling yourself trans, you can call yourself trans. That does not make you a transsexual in regards to like policy. So for example, if you are a man and if you're born a biological male and you say, well, I am transgender and I am now a woman, that does not afford you any special privileges. That does not mean you should have access to women's spaces, any of that. On the other hand, I believe if you are, if you have gender dysphoria is it's the mental illness that's associated with people's discomfort with the gender that they identify with versus their biological sex. If you're a biological male, let's say, and you undergo surgery to cut off your own genitals, you deserve to be called a woman more than most women. Sorry, Brittany, but it's like that should grant you access to female prisons, female sports, whatever. But simply calling yourself trans does not make you a different sex. And the most relevant aspect of gender, so in the way that I'm defining it, is you have the sex is the biological reality, and then gender expression is your socially constructed gender identity, whatever, trans masculine, trans feminine. You can broadly define it as woman, whatever. That together makes up gender. It's like the relevant aspect of that in virtually all policy and virtually all discrimination in virtually all dynamics of power has to do with sex. And calling yourself a woman, calling yourself a man does not make you that. and should not afford you any special privileges thereof. That's putting it very broadly, but we can get into it.
All right, so we can open up the floor, Rose.
All right, the first thing I can say here is, I mean, the very definition of a binary is something that doesn't have like exceptions, right? That's the reason why we call it a bimodal distribution. So I don't know why you said it was bimodal distribution, but then you said, oh, it's practically a binary one.
Right, it's functionally binary because there's so few intersex people that it's not worth addressing in terms of policy aside from.
Well, then it's not a binary, right? I mean,
Sure.
the portion of intersex people are the same amount.
If you have a million
people that have red hair, so for instance, this would be like saying that, oh, the possible hair colors for human beings to have is like black, brown, blonde, yeah, and that's all there is. And then someone brings up redheads, and it's like, oh, functionally, like redheads don't exist. Like it's just
sure. It's
silly.
definitely not a spectrum. Sex is not a spectrum in any practical sense.
I mean, do we agree that it's a bimodal distribution? Because that's all what we're talking about for the minute.
Sure. Well, okay, and we're gonna. This is semantic, I would say, but you know, if the bimodal distribution looks binary enough, in that the exceptions to that bimodal, the exceptions to that apparent binary are so few and far between, it's not a spec. There is no spec. Like there is male and female, and then there is intersex, and those intersex conditions are not part of sex as a spectrum. Those are, you know, often genetic mutations that, again, have no bearing on the person, but they don't change the definition of sex or the incredibly bimodal and binary.
Bimodal binary.
Okay, all right. How about this? Okay, with semantic, let's call it bimodal. Fair enough. I'm not set on.
There's also some more stuff I could add to that. So, for instance, you could easily classify some individuals as more male or more female than others as well. So it's not as simple. So just adding a bit more nuance to it, so to say.
Sure.
You say that there isn't any specific like instance in which somebody's like gender identity would be significant when it comes to like policy and stuff like that. And I can very easily point to a number of instances in which gender identity is very important for having successful policy outcomes when it comes to the treatment of these people in society as a whole. So one very easy example of this is just protected classes. So protection against discrimination in, for example, like the workplace or in public settings on, you know, by virtue of your gender identity. That's one of the strong ones there. Second one has to do with your right to having, you know, access to healthcare. On the basis of like your gender identity and the, you know, gender dysphoria that may be, you know, like correlated to your gender identity not matching up necessarily with your sexual class or your sexual classification. So those are two very specific examples in which you also need to take into consideration one's gender identity in order to be able to have policies that yield good outcomes for the well-being of these individuals.
Sure. Let's go to the gender dysphoria thing. Well, I mean, this is a broad question, but we can narrow it down. If someone says that they're trans, does that make them trans?
Well, typically people like being trans isn't like an identity. Being trans or like trans is a descriptive word to describe one's like transition within like their gender identity.
Fair enough. So as a protected class, so you were talking about protected class. So does sane, if I said to you right now, I am transgender, does that put me in the protected class?
Say you were transgender, you would say then that I identify as woman, non-binary.
Are you telling me how I identify as?
No, I'm asking you that identifying as trans is a bit silly. Nobody identifies as trans. That's not really how that works. So, for instance, the correct way
you might get canceled for that comment, but we'll see. Okay, let's say I identify as.
I'll argue against those people. Okay, but
let's say okay, I say I'm a trans woman. Does that afford me access now into this protected class?
Yeah. So, for instance, if you identify as a trans woman, you want to use she/her pronouns, and you have an employer that's very specifically and maliciously decides to misgender you and use he/him pronouns, for example, then yeah, absolutely, sure, yeah, that goes within protected classes.
Do I have access to medically reconstructive surgery because I said that I'm not, or do I need a therapist diagnosis to say that I have gender dysphoria?
Typically for like most cases right now, when it comes to like getting that type of like care from a healthcare perspective, there seems to be absolutely you need to get you have to have meetings with specific psychological experts and medical experts in order to obtain like clearance to be able to do those types of procedures, assuming that you're underage. If you're an adult, then you have the right to do whatever you want, right?
Sure, but I'm saying if I want to get gender reassignment surgery, I can't get that, or it's not considered medically necessary unless I have a diagnosis, right? Unless it's called gender dysphoria.
Yeah, that's typically how stuff works right now in society. Yeah, unless you are classified with with gender dysphoria, then you can that's a necessary part of being able to receive. Well, you live in the U.S.,
Right.
so there's no such thing as free healthcare, but yeah, like
Yeah.
entitled to those types of treatments as an adult.
Sure. So someone who
Or not.
says, someone who just says, I identify as trans and I'm looking.
You keep saying this. It's just a bit silly.
Okay. All right. You're right. Okay. Let's say I'm using trans as a proxy for, let's say I'm trans, feminine, trans feminine, or trans woman. Okay. There are plenty of people who call themselves trans. I hear it all the time, but we can, whatever. Trans woman is fine. If I call myself a trans woman, until I have a diagnosis, I am not afforded any medically necessary surgery. I'm not afforded access to any woman's female space like prison or sports. Do you agree that that's fair?
So you brought up 3 different examples there. What was your first example?
First one was surgery.
So that obviously depends on like who you are and what society you like live within. It seems that
That's fair.
like at the moment as an adult, you probably could be able to get like almost like whichever surgery you would want, but it obviously depends largely on the place when it comes to your identification with gender dysphoria. That is for adults. For younger individuals, it does, like sex reassignment surgery doesn't seem like a great solution to that for somebody that is underage. That's typically something that is resolved more with social transitioning, with puberty blockers, and with the rest of that. But there's also more research to be done there, specifically when it comes to what ages it would be beneficial to allow for sexual reassignment surgery, because the transgender like medical field is it's a fairly like new field of study. So there's a lot to talk about there. So that's an answer to your first question. What was the second point?
Prisons? Yeah, prisons and sports.
Yeah, so when it comes to prisons specifically, there is a lot of existing literature that suggests that people who identify as women but who are not put in women's prison face an abominable amount of abuse within those like prison systems, both from inmates and from guards. And if you look at on the flip side, if you look at people who identify as women being able to go to the prisons of which they identify as, those numbers there doesn't exist any research that those people exude a threat towards the cis women in those prisons, for instance. So by virtue of wanting to maximize the best possible outcomes through policy, it seems reasonable to allow people to go to the prison of which they identify as, lest they run the risk of facing terrible rates of abuse at a prison that they do not identify as.
Okay, well, on that specifically, so if a male sex offender, let's say, identifies as a woman, not arbitrarily is the wrong word, but let's say no history of gender dysphoria, no diagnosis, they go onto the stand and they say, I am a man, I'm going to get sentenced to 30 years in high security prison, 6'5", 250 pounds, have a penis. If they identify as a woman, you think that person should be put in a female prison?
So it seems reasonable in that specific instance that you gave there, that there needs to be some level of established precedent before that, like event.
Oh, I agree with that.
That seems like an absolutely reasonable policy to have there. However, if they say they identify as a woman, and they go to like at that moment, like spontaneously, so to say, and they're put in a men's prison, and in there they clearly demonstrate the an exhibition of the transitionary like stages, so like a social transition, maybe looking into medical alternatives and stuff like that. If it appears that this is a case of transitioning that is, I suppose, like valid, so to say, I don't know, then at that point, sure, throw them over to the woman.
Okay, I would say the reason you say that is because you recognize that just saying you're transgender or trans female or trans male doesn't make you transgender and doesn't afford you any protection as a special class. The only reason someone should get protection as a special class is if they have a diagnosis
before, right? For protected classes, that should be the treatment. Like,
why is there a difference between prison and protected class?
Well, because they're fundamentally like different social and like environments. One of them has to do with you recently having committed a crime, and one of them has to do with you literally engaging in the activities that are vital for your
those are definitely well-being. Yes. Prison is not the same as work, although a lot of people would tell you the same. But that's not the point. The point is,
You said there's no instance in which it's a good idea to
no,
to allow for this.
not it's a good idea. I'm saying from a definitional perspective, saying you're transgender, and I'm going to use the shorthand trans because people say they're trans all the time. Saying you're trans of one kind or another does not mean that you are afforded any sort of special protections.
You should be afforded protected class.
Why? So why should the person the 250-pound male who said he's a woman should not get put in a female prison because that has clear negative outcomes because that person is not actually a male or not actually a female. So, and because that guy could, obviously the example is someone could just clearly identify and say, hey, I want to go to a lower security prison where I'm less likely to get attacked, blah, 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 or I could have power. I'm going to go to a female prison. Okay, what if someone is in a workplace and they are just arbitrarily saying, you know what? You have to call me these pronouns by today. Why should I have to do that if you and I both agree that there's some instances where people just saying that they're trans doesn't make them trans? So why would that person be given a special class?
The fundamental difference here is that you could be afforded very distinct advantages that can come from a malicious place should you choose to identify as as a woman or as a gender that you were not assigned at birth at the moment of your arrest or your sentencing. It's very fair to inductively assume that hey, there's probably some maliciousness going on here. There is some attempt to skedaddle the legal system or whatever you would like to say. However, in the case of protected classes in your workplace, there's that same the same reasoning for a potential malicious intent just simply doesn't exist there to the same extent at all.
Why not? People play power games all the time. Back to the point about power.
So let's if I can get you I feel like there's a misunderstanding because of protected classes are. You might have the idea that protected classes works as follows: that hey, if I walk in today to work and I now identify as a woman, and then the first person that uses he/him pronouns, I will now sue them for violating protected classes. That's not how it works. Obviously, for you to be able to take advantage of the legal clause that is protected classes, you need to have demonstrated a continued period of specific and targeted harassment towards the individual on the basis of their protected class. I mean, it's pronouns are do you
agree that there are probably some small and before I go into this more, I want to say this. I spoke to a trans man a while ago on my YouTube channel, and the reason that I'm interested in this conversation to begin with is because I genuinely believe that there are genuinely gender dysphoric people who start in childhood, go through adolescence, become adults, and actually benefit from gender reassignment surgery, all of that. I think this is a separate thing we'll have to go and do. I think the biggest barrier to acceptance on the part of transgender adults is the fact that people advocate that children should be even put in the same category. And that includes
now we're going to something completely different.
I agree, but right. Yes, I want to just say that, but I want to just establish this up front. There are people who easily could abuse this social agreement that we have of if you say that you are trans, that makes you trans, versus the only people that I regard as transgender or transsexual that should be afforded those special protections are people who have been diagnosed as gender dysphoric. If you have not been diagnosed as gender dysphoric, then you could easily just be in a workplace. I could, in this conversation, I could say, Rose, you better call me. My pronouns are His Holiness the Pope. And if you don't refer to me as that, I'm going to get upset. And that's a little power game we can play. And, I don't think most trans people do that, obviously. And again, but there are those who will, because, assuming that trans people are just like everyone else, which I agree with, there are some small proportion of them will have malicious intent. And the whole idea that if you identify as a different gender or different sex is as arbitrary as me saying that I identify as a different race or whatever. So that's just to establish my broader point.
Can I address these things?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So to your point, I wish you the absolute best of luck. And if you successfully manage to do this, I will be PayPaling you $100. If you go to the place with even the most stringent pro-trans protected class policies for you to go in somewhere and declare yourself you go by His Holiness the Pope and to get someone sued under protected classes for using that pronoun. If you manage to do so, hands fucking down. But once again, this is a misunderstanding of how protected classes
Well, it's an extreme principle.
Protected classes, but it's not applicable.
Jessica Yaniv.
No longer the same
Jessica
thing.
Yaniv is an example of that.
Absolutely. So explain how that is a valid example.
So she claims she is Jessica Yanev is a male who identifies as female or trans feminine, trans woman.
Yeah.
And she tried to sue a spa for not waxing her genitals because they only do female waxing.
Yeah.
And that is an example of a person who would attempt to do that kind of stuff. And I don't think
she was shut down. Absolutely. Right. Because that
yes.
clinic served vaginas. She had a penis. So
because because the
operating perfectly.
Right. Because the only people who are truly trans are transsexuals who have a gender dysphoric diagnosis.
Well,
otherwise,
no, this
give
has
me
to
an
do
example.
This has to do with the salon, offering, service towards vaginas and not towards penises.
Which is sex. That's why. And that's why I use the term transsexual, because I think that's what a lot of
so what point is being made by this?
That gender identity, saying that you're a different gender does not afford you. What's an example of someone who isn't gender dysphoric?
Gender identity. The clash there was between the genitals of Jessica Yanev and the genitals that were served by the salon. This has nothing to do with gender. Why we're bringing gender into this?
Okay, so what's the point of offering protected class status to people who aren't gender dysphoric?
Well, because fundamentally you can still see that there's harassment and that there's negative outcomes from that harassment towards trans individuals who may not have a diagnosis yet.
There's harassment against short people. Short people aren't a protected
exactly,
class.
And we seek to ameliorate that through legislation against harassment in the workplace.
Sure, it would all fall under general harassment, but trans people shouldn't be a protected class any more than short people.
But they
unless they're transsexual,
specifically see that they face specifically terrible treatment when it comes to their workforce in a similar way to what, for example, Black Americans may face when it comes to specifically going towards the workforce, because there exist cultural and social trends which tend to more often than not manifest themselves into negative treatment of these specific individuals in the society, which is why we have the protected classes of trans people, for instance, and not protected classes against people with small big toes or whatever, there's a level of prevalence that should be established before you add something into a protected a specific protected class. But I want to address a few of the other things you said here.
Sure.
Before we move on. So I talked about the His Holiness the Pope thing. Good luck with that one. When it comes to the other things how do I avoid this? It's very, very simple. Even if you if there is such a malicious person that would somehow need to bait you into utilizing a set of misgendering pronouns over a long enough period of time for them to be able to prove that in a court of law, which that's a difficult one. You can very easily just use gender neutral pronouns. Just go with they or just use their name. And there you go. That's this is really not a big issue whatsoever when it comes to this stuff of protected classes on the basis of self-identification.
Asking to be called by certain pronouns. For example, I use pronouns in reference to people's sex. So if you're a male, I say he, him. And if they say, I want to be called something else, I'm going to be polite in most circumstances. But if I felt, for example, that someone was doing that as a power game, it's ma'am guy at GameStop, that's a meme, but that's an example of the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. And certainly, that's one.
So you can make fun of that person for being an absolute dickhead, but there's no reason to bring apart a specific part of discrimination.
Right, but if I didn't call that person ma'am, I should be in some sort of trouble.
This has nothing to do with protected classes. This is why I think there's a misunderstanding of what protected classes are. Protected classes very specifically tends to do with workforces and the treatment in employment and stuff like that. And she was a customer in that situation, as per my understanding. But fundamentally, it's entirely possible to be rude to someone that's being a dick without indulging in a very specific type of harassment that has very, very detrimental effects with their mental health.
Yeah, but
this is really not common.
Right. But your point about the fact that you wish me luck because if I try to identify as His Holiness the Pope, I'd say that's as ridiculous as that person demanding that people call him ma'am.
All right. You know what? When you present me research that indicates that people not being called His Holiness the Pope has hyper detrimental effects on their mental health, we can talk about it. But for the moment, I don't believe that exists. So I'm not.
Well, speaking of, okay, fair enough. We can transition into this. Speaking of trans, we can transition into this next thing. So would you agree that gender dysphoria is a mental illness the same way that like depression or anxiety might be mental illness?
Yeah, probably it's comparable in a number of cases.
Okay. I agree with that. I think that's, well, so here's an associated point. I think the statistic I have is the rates of autism are like 6 times higher in gender dysphoric people. Are you aware of any of those studies or stats?
Nope.
Okay.
But I can take your word for it.
Yeah. So one thing I could say is, given the high rates of autism as a comorbidity, and just comorbidity is a technical term of if you're diagnosed with gender dysphoria, you're more likely to be diagnosed with autism. A lot of the discrimination that gender dysphoric people face might not be differentiated any more than people who are autistic face. So how does, I guess my broader question is, how does that affect your thinking at all in terms of if it's as a high rate of comorbidities as a mental illness, maybe that isn't the best policy to say, well, if this person is demanding that they be called by certain pronouns, it's as ridiculous to be demanded to be called His Holiness the Pope when that's, it's like that. I don't really think I'm the Pope, and maybe that person who's autistic really doesn't think they're trans. They're just struggling. They have they're isolated. They're depressed, which is common for autistic people. Why are we conflating the two potentially?
This could be like telling a person who has depression and anxiety that you only need to worry about the depression one because symptoms between like anxiety and depression can be very similar. This is very weird. Why not just like check for all the symptoms and diagnose according to what we find? This seems very weird. Why you're trying to like undersell gender dysphoria as being like a subfacet of autism. This is I've never heard this one before.
Really, that's strange because it's because like for me, it's and we can get into Abigail Schreier's work because I think this is where a lot of
absolutely. I'm very excited to go into that.
Yes. Oh, me too. It could very easily be the case that, for example, like if you are a depressed teenager, and a lot of young teenagers are, it's like a 4,000% increase over the past 3 years, something like that. If you are isolated and feel lonely, that identifying as trans can offer you immediate access to social approval and a group, and that people who otherwise have mental health issues mistakenly self-diagnose as, oh, well, the reason that my problems are the way that they are is because I'm actually trans. And I think it's very dangerous to say, yes, identify that then we should then treat that as a separate mental health issue, when in reality, that is merely a symptom of deeper mental health issues. And again, if you're not disputing the significant association between autism and gender dysphoria, or people that claim to be, diagnosis otherwise, people who self-report, then I think we need to think about that for a while, because that has big implications. But I don't know what your thoughts are.
I'm gonna keep it real. That was really confusing, but I'll try my best to work with it as good as possible.
Maybe I should slow down on the first
part. I don't think the slowing down is the issue, but regardless, the first part of this, when it comes to being like how they'll afford you easy entry into a social group, if you're in a bad position mentally, probably the worst thing you could possibly do is like falsely identify as trans, because holy fuck, trans people face some absolutely terrible and disgusting treatment generally societally,
and they also gave a lot of approval.
Do you have any? Please, I would be like mind blown to see you provide like a piece of evidence illustrating that people identifying as trans will have like generally like positive effects when it comes to their treatment in society, and I will be mind blown if you can provide me that.
Well,
can I just go through the stuff that you said, because there was like quite a bit of stuff
Drivel.
being.
Go ahead.
But yeah, that seems like probably the absolutely like worst case thing you can do there. Now, when it comes to the work of Abigail Schreier and the stuff she talked about, she can effectively, and she's pretty good at this, she's pretty good at spinning like a narrative that could potentially make sense. However, when it comes to the empirical aspect of anything she fucking says, it is absolutely laughable. So, for instance, one of the most pretty much like the underlying piece of evidence that she basically, based her entire book around was Lisa Littman's study on rapid onset gender dysphoria. That's like the principal thing tying this all together, because assuming that the outcomes of that study are correct, then it could be more fair to assume that the stuff that she's talking about is true. Now, unfortunate for Abigail Schreier, that study is complete and utter dog shit. So, for instance, what the study ends up saying is that, or according to its own conclusion, is that there is a prevalence of young people, spuriously or rapidly acquiring so-called gender dysphoria from what they believe to be different social spheres and atmospheres and stuff like that. And from that, Abigail Schreier builds on this and say, clearly society is conditioning or coercing people into becoming trans in order to solve these issues that they're dealing with that you talked about previously. Now, the issues with these studies are immense. So first and foremost, the person that did that study had absolutely no experience with discussions of trans issues, and it shows from the quality of the study. So that's just one thing I could add directly. But most also important to like her general work ethic, her study received extensive critique when it was at the preliminary results stage from a wide range of different academics. Littman didn't change shit. She basically didn't care. She was like, I don't care. I'm going to push it through anyway. Yep. But most damningly, this wasn't even a study. This was a survey. This didn't even study a single trans individual.
Observational.
It didn't study a single trans individual. This was a survey of the parents. And what ended up happening is that the parents were given a survey based on a weird interpretation of the DSM-5 and were asked to self-diagnose their children, which is
parent report, which is one of the most common forms of psychiatric diagnosis for children.
There's a bit more on this. Now, it's not just that these studies were handed out to any people with, transgender kids. These studies and this form basically was spread around probably, a series of very, very transphobic, not probably, they were spread around a series of transphobic parts of the internet. So for instance, websites like Fourth Wave Now, Transgender Trend, and Youth Transcritical Professionals were the three major sources from which this survey was spread. And the people there probably don't have the most non-biased view on what it means to be trans and the perception of their children with trans. In addition to this, the study just disqualified entries from people who said that they didn't perceive rapid onset gender dysphoria within their children. Only 2.4% of the people who answered that survey believed that their kid was correct in their identity, which further proves the point of, hey, the people that took the survey probably weren't the most I suppose balanced when it comes to their perspective on this specific thing. 8.6% didn't even know if their kids still identified as trans. The questions in general were extraordinarily loaded when it comes to the type of questions they were given and stuff like that. There was no survey security. This survey could have been taken 100 times by one specific individual. It didn't even make sure and ensure that these people actually had transgender kids. And it's just generally an absolutely terrible study when it comes to its methodology and should be absolutely discredited. There's no value in this.
Well, this is where I think we're going to get into the blood and the bloody debate, because first off, I would say that everything you just said was an assertion. So first off, the study was.
Do you disagree with anything I just said?
I disagree with most of it.
False.
Yeah, let me go through it.
Right.
So you said that the methodology of the study was horrible, which is just an assertion that's subjective, and you're in no position to judge that. The study was internal review board approved, and even after the criticism and after an update, the study stood. That's one thing. And a lot of the studies, show me a study that is isn't done with. There are plenty of studies that you would cite to validate the effectiveness of social transitioning, medical transitioning. Plenty of them are also selection bias prone because it's also samples of different websites. And the first off, the websites you described, Fourth Wave, all that, whatever, you said they're transphobic. Again, an assertion. 85% of the parents said they're in support of LGBTQ rights. And
that's another thing. LGB rights.
No, LGBTQ rights.
All right.
85% of parents, 88% of parents surveyed reported being supportive of transgender rights. Now, you said these are transphobic websites, and I would say, again, nonsense. One of the websites I looked at, I don't know if it was Fourth Wave or one of them, was founded by someone who underwent reassignment surgery and then desisted, and they started the website as a means of support for people. And I'd also just broader point out, well, let me get into this, but the studies are not the end all be all, and I want to make that very clear, and we'll get into that.
Can we work through these one by one? And
okay. Well, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
All right. So if we look at if you just go to these websites that I mentioned, Fourth Wave Now, Transgender Trend, Youth Critical Trans Professionals. Mm-hmm. What do you think is going to be the overall opinion there on the validity of young people transitioning? I have a question. Compared to an average or a representative portion of the population.
That's the place where parents who have children who believe they have rapid onset gender dysphoria would go to.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So it's affirming already what the study seeks to prove, right? It's not, it doesn't build upon.
What does the study seek to prove?
The study seeks to prove or find the existence of the, rapid onset gender dysphoria.
Do you not think that's a thing?
I mean, no.
You don't think there are people who had no history of gender dysphoria that in their adolescence suddenly developed gender dysphoria?
I'm not going to say that there's no case of an individual, specific case doing that, because that'd be very silly. Because
do you think it's a phenomenon worth studying? That's relevant to this discussion?
That's worth studying, absolutely. And if you present me with a better article that shows this, then I would be very amazed. In fact, they actually changed the title of this given study to, parent reports of adolescents
and young parent reports
perceived to show signs of rapid onset gender dysphoria.
And as Kenneth
Zucker, this doesn't prove anything. You realize this, right?
No studies prove anything. And I dare you to show me a study that proves anything conclusively. Here's my broader point, and this will be fun. I just want to quote an article from the Journal of American Medicine, or the Journal of the American Medical Association. This is the central argument that I'm going to make here.
Are you moving on from the study now?
No, because it's relevant to these studies, because we're going to talk about these studies more. My position is that we are currently in a space in which all of these studies, the studies that you would cite, are as susceptible to bias as the Lisa Lippman study. This is a new phenomenon. You agree there is no conclusive evidence. Nowhere are you going to be able to find me a study or a meta-analysis that says we can conclusively find, or we can even generalize these findings to the broader trans population. Because in many of the studies that you would cite, it explicitly states that because we don't know the number of trans people, we can't actually determine whether or not this is a representative sample. I'm sure you would agree that because we have all this discrimination of trans people, it's impossible to know the numbers, and therefore we can't form a representative sample. So here's what I'm going to argue, and this is going to be fun. This is a journal of the American Medical Association from 1946.
Oh, okay.
Extensive scientific studies have proved that smoking in moderation by those for whom tobacco is not specifically contraindicated, meaning is specifically they have allergic reaction to, does not appreciably shorten life. My argument is that we are clearly in a position now where these so-called reputable medical institutions, which to some degree, of course they are, the American Medical Association are, but this is the same American Medical Association that said that smoking in moderation does not appreciably shorten life. Extensive scientific studies have proved, and the Lisa Lippman study is the tip of the iceberg, and there's plenty of stuff we can go into that indicates that, hey, all of this stuff specifically surrounding children is not good. No studies follow up with, there's no long-term studies following up with children that indicate that the transition is successful past 5 or 6 years. The mean age of all these studies are 40, 50 years old. So we need to talk about the studies, but my entire point is that we are in a position where, because of political and ideological reasons, of which there obviously are, these studies are not valid, and these studies are not useful in aggregate. And Lisa Lippman's study is one piece of evidence on the contrary. That's comparable to other ones you have.
So if you were to be logically consistent with this, then you would have to throw out the entirety of academia. If you're going to say that,
don't say that. Why would you say that? Do you actually think I would do that?
Because if you're going to say that, I can never actually disprove any study, or we cannot trust any studies by virtue of, here is 1946 where one study had incredibly.
That's not what I'm saying. My point is reputable institutions are capable of making poor Science.
Okay, so what's the conclusion of that? What's the prescription that comes from that?
So one prescription is going back to the sex and gender thing. I think it is a
No,
horrible
specifically within academia. If you talk about like research and studies, what like conclusions can we bring from that?
I'm talking about in context of this discussion. We're talking about whether or not we should, for example, prescribe hormones to puberty blockers to children. There are no long-term studies that say that that's a good idea. And I would say it's experimental, and there's a variety of words I would like to use that are more emotionally loaded that I'm not going to use. But I think that this is a massive failure on the part. Everybody knows it. We should not, because a 12-year-old says that they think they're one sex or another, to then put them on puberty blockers, which we know have negative outcomes and are not entirely reversible. And we have no long-term studies saying what percentage of people who are on puberty blockers end up with no long-term side effects after desistance of them. This is entirely experimental. And I please cite whatever studies you have that are conclusive in any way.
All right. So let's take this one at a time, okay? Right now we're going
Sorry,
over
I'm amped up.
study when it comes to this,
running through.
okay? Because
Go
there's
ahead.
a lot of stuff being said here.
Yep.
Okay. The first thing I'm going to say is that if I ever cite a study that's as shitty as this Lisa Lippman study, please burn me at the stake, because
most of the studies, when I watched your video, a lot of the studies were
okay. What's one example?
So, for example, you said what was the critique of Lisa Lippman was it was sent to transphobic websites, right? And therefore there was a selection bias.
Uh-huh.
So this is the Bailey, Ellis, and McNeil study in 2014 on the Cornell website that you describe as, it's the meta-analysis that indicates all of these, that social transition is good and all this. This is a quote from that study.
So
the survey,
what was the name of this?
Bailey, Ellis, and McNeil, 2014. It's from the website that you referenced in your video. Responding to Abigail Schreier. Yeah.
All right, cool.
Oh, I'll send you Discord. Once. Survey hosted by SurveyMonkey was disseminated to over 70 organizations and groups throughout the UK, including trans or LGBT support organizations, health and equality groups, online forums, and professional networks. Survey bias. Give me a study. Give me a study that is better than the Lisa Lippman study.
I don't recognize this. Have I linked this?
Probably not, because you wouldn't have the position you do if you did.
Then send. Okay, wait. So, like, in what context have I linked this? I do not recall.
This is part of the on the corner, and we're talking to each other.
Oh, this is
a bigger audience.
This is one of the 50
the meta-analysis, the
studies.
51. Yes.
This is one of the 50 ones.
Yep.
Okay, cool. I see.
Yes. So
right.
Do you have a study that is done conclusively that says, for example, that treating children who have rapid onset gender dysphoria or gender dysphoria developed in late adolescence is a good idea or doesn't have long-term risks?
No. I don't claim.
Of course not. Right, because it's experimental. And so you would agree that a child who identifies as trans shouldn't just be put on. Well, let me more practically. Do you agree that the affirmative care model, which is the standard model recommended by American Psychological Association, World Health, Trans Organization, all of those, do you think the affirmative care model is crazy and should be dismantled? Which says that. Hold on, let me just define it for the audience. The affirmative care, there's people who won't know. The affirmative care model is that if you are a patient and you walk into a gender clinic and you say, I believe I am gender dysphoric, I believe I'm transgender. The affirmative care model means, and this is the guidelines put forth by the American Psychological Association and others, say that the therapist has an obligation to agree and transition or to treat that person as if they have correctly diagnosed themselves, and to ask them to get their gender identity more in line with their sex is unethical. And I have that quote as well, if we're in doubt of that. But that's what the affirmative care model is. You agree that's wrong?
A long time to talk now, because if we did the breakdown on the speaking time for these things, it'll look pretty nuts. But anyway,
maybe.
So you asked me the question: do you have any studies that conclusively like prove that the outcomes are like always or overwhelmingly positive when it comes to the practice of giving like young people puberty blockers. To which the answer is no. However, just because there may not be 100% conclusive evidence, which is very difficult to say, and the law to like the line to draw there is very arbitrary, I absolutely do have evidence to suggest that it's absolutely not like experimental, like in the way that you tend to say it is, or that's something that's like been never done before, or that there isn't like, or that there exists like large swaths of evidence that illustrates that it's harmful. But before I get onto that, before I get onto my burden in this debate, I want to go over this Abigail Schreier thing to say specifically. So, and this study, it's hard to like what more I can build on over than like what I've already said. Do you believe that the can you like tell me with like a straight face right now that the methodology that was used in the study of Lisa Littman here can be used to, with any degree of certainty, prove the existence of rapid onset gender dysphoria as a phenomenon? Can you does this study prove that it exists? Rapid onset? Yeah,
you just agreed that it exists, so that's not what the study is proving.
No, hold on. That's not what do you think rapid onset gender dysphoria means?
Gender dysphoria that develops in late adolescence, so like 13 and older, with no previous history.
Okay. Do you think this study proves the existence of that?
I think it's a strong indication of it.
Okay. So, for instance, you're completely missing out about like a million different like confounding variables that have to do with a parent's ability to be able to make that determination. So, first of all, there is the fact that this survey literally threw out all results from individuals that say that they didn't perceive rapid onset gender dysphoria among their children. So already you're selecting for a tiny amount of people. In addition to that, you also know that 8.6% of these people like literally didn't even know if their kid still identifies as like transgender. So that's also a massive, like a large portion of people directly thrown out. Now, the fact that there is like literally no survey security, that people can respond to this like quiz like how many times they want, and there is no proof for whether or not these individuals actually have trans kids, also further like delegitimizes the value of these survey respondents. Now, in addition to that, asking parents to specifically like diagnose their children with a DSM-5 is fucking laughable.
That's not what they were
There is a reason why we have medical professionals that make these diagnoses, and you don't ask parents to diagose their kids.
They weren't asked. You're making that up.
No, they were asked to like to determine
respond to questions.
To determine. If one of the questions is, do you believe that your child suffers from, and then a description of a diagnosis description, that being of rapid onset gender dysphoria.
Do you know what the question? Do you know what the questions were? Do you have any examples of the questions?
Yes or no? Was there a question asking the parents on that survey whether or not their children suffered from the definition of rapid onset gender dysphoria?
Right. Yes.
That question existed, right?
And everyone who said no was thrown out.
That is literally a diagnosis. Do you realize that, right? That is what a diagnosis is.
A diagnosis is when a medical professional makes that statement. This was a survey on parents who, by their own observation,
parents to replicate the work of something that is typically done by medical professionals. Correct? You're asking them to like apply a given medical label to an individual.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So then what?
No. That's not what I said. Yeah, to. Okay. The parents were asked, "Did your child do you have a child who has claimed to be gender dysphoric or as trans in their 13, 14, or whatever late adolescence, who had no previous history of it?" That was the question.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right, because they were only interested in studying rapid onset gender dysphoria.
That is asking the parents to diagnose them with what the study believes is rapid onset gender dysphoria.
Fair enough. Yes.
Okay. Perfect. So you're asking parents to do something which they are not in a position to do.
They are in a position to do that.
Hold on.
You're right. Because, hold on. Let me step back. Sorry.
I need to finish my thing because
go ahead.
You're asking parents to do something which there is about like a million different ways in which the parents may be left out of this. The whole there is a reason why there is a like the whole term you're in the closet, right? It's because you're keeping stuff secretive. You're afraid of showing your parents or the people around you for whatever reason. And that entire like phenomenon, the fact that exists, makes it so that, hey, if you ask someone, oh, were there any like previous symptoms or indications to this specific event? it doesn't make any sense, right? Because it's very easy, and there's a multitude of situations in which an individual would seek to hide that from their parents. In addition to that, it also asked the parents in the study to like recall things as long back ago as childhood, which very, very many fucking years ago. And in addition to that, things like recall and buy-in bias can play a significant part in the parents' recollection of the specific event. All in all, given the terrible service security of this, the fact that a portion of the people, answering this survey didn't even know if their kids identified as trans, which is indicative of what relationship they might have with their children or did have with their children. The fact that you're asking, parents to do a job that is very difficult for them to do, and you're putting them in a situation in which there is about 1 million different biases that can influence their outcomes and their responses. This survey is worthless.
Every criticism you just laid can be levied against other surveys. Well, hold on. First off, I know you do that. Well, let me make a point. It was internal review board.
Does that mean that you concede that this study is would you trust a study like this?
As much as I would trust any study you provide. I looked at your studies. I looked at 10 of them of the 50. All had the same level of potential bias as this one. Give me an example of a study that isn't susceptible to the same bias. I just gave you one example of an example where the study in which you based your meta-analysis off of was also done by survey.
That I based my meta.
It wouldn't be based off of. Why was it internal review board approved? And what standard is it being held to that other standards aren't? Why was after criticism? Why was it not brought down?
It was approved because the new title is because the title is Parent Reports of Adolescents in young, in adults.
Do you disagree that parent reports form an essential part of psychological behavior in children? Like studies used to determine psychological behavior in children, antisocial or otherwise?
If it's in a position in which we believe that the input of the parents are valuable and in which we can actually affirm that the data is valid and there aren't about 1 million other confounds.
The study I sent you and stuff like that is susceptible to the same cybersecurity concerns. They both use SurveyMonkey and both were internal review board. Now I'll be honest with you. I am not in an academic position. I don't know what the standards are for internal review board approval, but they both were. So on what grounds do you know for certain it wasn't cybersecurity approved? It's like, okay, well, the internal review board has its own policies and procedures to determine that are valid in the studies that in the video you made responding to Abigail Schreier's thing.
So let's do this one at a time. So do you believe that the study you cited, the Lisa Lippman study, that the data there is practically worthless? Do you agree with this?
No. It's as valid as we're
operating on completely different standards for academia. Yes.
Right.
All right.
Because we have different motivations. What study? Can you give me a study that's as good as that's better than the Lisa Lippman study? What specific? What are you talking about? What specific field are you talking about? I'm not going to find you a study that says that rapid onset gene 4 doesn't exist, because you can't you don't prove the non-existence of something. That's fairly hard to do, right? Okay, I'm noticing.
What specific do you want me to demonstrate here?
What long-term studies or what studies do you have about the positive effects in transgender children that are not susceptible to the same biases that you described in the Lisa Lippman study?
All right, I will dig through and I can send you a series of them. But see, here's this is the
sure, issue. And fair enough. And this gets into
you want to conflate the quality of the studies instead of just basically expressing.
Sure, and we're having a debate where people are watching, so it's not really fair for us to say, "Well, I looked at your study, you looked at mine." I looked through yours.
Specifically, one of the prompts that we were to discuss was, and I will read it out now. Does there exist a social pressure predominantly driven by social media which pressures adolescents into transitioning? And as of right now, there is no credible evidence to suggest that this prompt is correct or that this is true. And I encourage you to provide that to me.
See, this is just your assertions.
But these are the prompts.
Okay,
what we agreed on.
No, I understand that. First, let me say two things. First off, my point, do you agree that there is no evidence conclusively can be drawn about the long-term benefits of, for example, putting children on puberty blockers or the existence of rapid onset gender dysphoria?
Do you agree with that? For a fact that children have been put on puberty blockers for several decades now, and that the outcomes from those don't seem to be particularly or subrogatorily harmful for them to be put out of practice. That's okay.
There's
a reason fundamentally at the end of the day why it is common practice in the medical field.
Yeah, the same reason that they said cigarettes was a good idea, because there's a political and economic motivation to do so. I know, and you don't believe that. Wait, do you agree that puberty blockers carry long-term risk, and there's no conclusive evidence on anyone's position that doing so doesn't carry with them long-term risks?
So from what I've seen right now, just like any medical treatment, there exists side effects and potential harms to like literally anything. So in the case of puberty blockers, there appears to be certain risk when it comes to, for instance, something in relation to bone density, stuff in relation to that, certain things in relation to height, and those
infertility.
The infertility claims seem. I haven't seen substantial.
Mayo Clinic.
You can feel free to send me a link for that one in specific.
Mayo Clinic. People can Google it.
You can feel free to send me a link to that in specific. But we do know for a fact that puberty blockers do have positive effects when it comes to the treatment of, for example, or the experiencing of gender dysphoria for like a specific individual who is suffering from it, because it fundamentally reduces the extent of the gender dysphoria they feel when it comes to the development of a puberty for which they don't feel like they identify as.
So we got about 5 minutes, and then we're going to get to the Q&A. I know this was a long debate, and it's probably late for you, Rose, so I don't know if you...
Yeah, what time is it?
It's over midnight.
Yeah, so, I mean, we don't have to have the pop buns if you guys are not up to that. We can just...
No, I'm cool with it. I'll run it.
Yeah.
You guys are okay with having pop buns?
Sure.
Questions?
I'm down to go.
So
can we get into this last part?
Yeah.
So let me just establish where we are. You claim that there are studies that back up what you're saying, obviously.
Okay.
I'm saying that the studies that you provided are as susceptible to the same biases that the Lisa Littman study was subject to. It was, and it was internal review board approved. I just sent you the one that said they used the same Survey Monkey, which you could easily say it's not cybersecurity approved. The mean age of most of these studies
was that study passed around in like specific social media spheres that were overwhelmingly in favor of like transgender affirmation, for instance?
It was cited.
Did those studies specifically, were they like the respondents to that, like indicating that the people who respond to it have no fucking idea in regards to the health outcomes of the... I can hear myself
echo, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Did those studies indicate as well that the respondents, a lot of them have no fucking idea about the state of their their child when it comes to their specific identity? That's a very loaded questions and terminology.
Empirical analysis. They have no fucking idea. Hold on, let me just let's. And I agree. And going into the study stuff is what it always devolves into. But let me bring this broader point. Detransitioners, you recognize are real.
They exist.
In your understanding, how long after transgender surgery, after hormone therapy, like how long does it take for a detransitioner to realize it was a mistake?
How long does it take for a detransitioner who's been on puberty blockers to realize it was a mistake?
Or I'm just asking you in general, based on, I mean, you've certainly done research into the detransitioners.
I'm not quite sure what kind of question this is.
How long after a transgender person goes through surgery or hormone therapy or puberty blockers does it take for that person to realize, for the detransitioners, for people of whom they regretted it, how long does it take for them to regret it usually? Because from what I've seen, and there are no studies on this, which is part of the problem, which is again...
I mean, there are studies on detransitioning that exist.
There are, and there are some that say most adults who go through transsexual surgery don't regret it, which is proof that if you're an adult, you should be able to do that with fine, as long as you have a diagnosis of gender dysphoria. But my point is that we are literally giving children hormone therapy and doing surgery on them. And it's extremely experimental, because you agree we have no long-term studies that say that this is conclusively good. And to me, it's self-evident that we should not be injecting children with chemical castrating hormones when we know that there are long-term effects. You laugh, but that's what it is.
You still haven't linked me the infertility bit, so I'm gonna take that with
it's the Mayo Clinic. Google it. Google effective.
No, just send me the link.
We're having a debate. There's other people watching. I'm not going to convince you. It's the people watching. But hold on. What's your response to that?
I haven't seen it. I've never heard of it before. That's why I'm asking you to link it.
Detransitioners. Do you not agree that it is a significant
risk? Now we're talking
risk?
about something else. Oh my!
I know. I want to, because we want to wrap up on this, because this is the most important point. The fact that there are detransitioners coming out at extremely high rates is an indication.
Extremely high rates. Demonstrate that.
You're right. Wrong. That's wrong. Not extremely high rates. Hold on.
Right.
Right. Okay. Show me some good faith here. There are more detransitioners are increasingly coming out more than they have before.
Can you demonstrate that?
Sure. Wait, do you disagree with that? You don't think there are detransitioners whose stories are out there that aren't that have come out more as
individual
recent times?
anecdotes is not data.
Oh my God. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
This is the you would be on the side of the American Medical Association who cited that cigarettes were okay. Well, individual anecdotes don't count.
Okay. Do you
It's
think
like
we've made significant progress within the medical
studies are
field
done,
between now and 1946?
Neither of us have any background in medicine. And so for you to sit there and say, well, we're only going to look at the evidence, it's like, my point is, it's self-evident to anyone watching that it's risky to give kids hormone therapy. And you say, well, we don't have any evidence of that. It's
Hold
like,
on, now
okay.
we're talking about hormone therapy. We haven't even been talking about hormone therapy, dog. We're talking about puberty blockers. Now we're bringing something completely new into this.
No, hold on. Detransitioners.
What does hormone therapy mean to you?
Puberty blockers are blocking of the
when you say hormone therapy in regards to trans stuff, you very
testosterone supplements and whatnot.
refer to HRT. Yeah, we're not talking about HRT at the moment. We're talking about puberty blockers. Now you're blinking something else into this. I haven't argued for giving HRT to adolescents.
You're right. And
this is the thing. We
need to
keep in mind,
take it back.
The third thing I've caught you on now in this statement.
Mm-hmm.
That's been either a pivot or something that's unsubstantiated.
Fine,
but keep going.
I agree. It's unsubstantiated in terms of we don't have any studies as of right now. Mm-hmm. Do you agree that it can still be true despite the fact that there are no studies? And are you willing to engage in a logical thing of just, hey, do you agree that we should not be affirming many children, many of whom are autistic, and saying we should do the gender affirming care model? Do you agree that that's not a good idea?
It seems like right now, the existing literature suggests that is probably a good course of action when it comes to the performance of, transgender individuals in the healthcare system.
Okay. And
therefore,
fair enough. And if you are only going to go based on what the purely what the medical literature suggests and not interpret it in just like you criticized the Lisa Lippman study, if you turn that lens inward to the own studies and say, well, wait a second, we know that autism is at higher rates of comorbidity for children who are identifying as rapid, or who have what you might call rapid onset gender dysphoria, children who develop gender dysphoria in their adolescence. Why on earth would we give them medical procedures when we could easily wait and see, and there's no evidence that those are the best things? Do you not think it's...
The reason why we don't want to wait and see is because we know that individuals who have gone through a full puberty have far less successful outcomes when it comes to their HRT and their SRS surgery, to the point where it can incur higher amounts of gender dysphoria and thus the mental negatives that come as a basis of that than should they have been on puberty blockers.
Right. And you agree there's a gap in our evidence that says those people who went through it and may have regretted it is not there yet, right?
You're correct.
There does not exist medical literature
on the fact that there exists
fair enough. And
people who decide to detransition.
Fair enough. And I would say, taking it to and we can maybe wrap up here. It's like the fact that you are unwilling to say, well, because there is no evidence specifically for it. There are multiple ways to make truth claims. Empirical evidence is one of them. Inductive reasoning is another. Very obviously to say, hey, there are a lot of children who've experienced rapid, their gender dysphoric, and they didn't. Let me finish my point. Can I finish my point?
No, I'm going to interrupt because if I hadn't interrupted, then there would have been 2 or 3 things already that had gone by that I wouldn't have been able to address.
There are children who experience gender dysphoria at 13, 14, in late adolescence that had no previous history. We don't know the numbers.
According to the words of unverified testimonies.
No, I'm asking you straight out, Rose. Do you agree that that's a thing? Do you agree that there are kids out there at 13, 14, study aside, do you not have the inductive reasoning to say, hey, there are probably kids who, with no previous history of gender dysphoria, are now gender dysphoric? Study aside, I'm just asking you.
How the fuck am I supposed to make that?
Okay, fair enough. This is what I mean. This is what I mean, where you are not even willing to engage and say, "I'm going to operate."
It's possible that individual exists yet, but all of the existing
it's possible or likely.
No, it doesn't seem likely, because if it would have been likely for that to be something that occurs in any significant capacity, I do believe that there would have been research.
This is a I'm going to douche it up right now. If there's an epistemological gap between you and I, where you are only willing to make truth claims based on the evidence, which is the reason I brought the cigarette thing, is because all of the evidence said that cigarettes were proven to be harmful to people. And clearly, given the political pressures and the ideological pressures that exist in today's society with the gender critical, the gender theory, and we haven't substantiated that. Fair enough. I think it's obvious to anyone listening that there's clearly a political push to support transgender people to go along with whatever people say.
For me to agree
so
with this,
given that, hold on, let me finish. You keep
provide me with
interrupting.
evidence.
No, I don't, because that's so self-evident. If you want to operate in the evidence,
you think I'm asking about the wrong thing. You would need to provide me evidence that there currently exist people within the field of like studying transgender issues that are specifically not able to express like the true findings of their studies, or have to repress the findings of their studies.
Sure, Abigail Schreier interviewed a bunch of them in her book. Kenneth Zucker, Ray Blanchard.
And these people have been largely discredited in their field, not by virtue of them just disagreeing with the
consensus,
but
Ken Zucker is a co-author of the DSM-5 definition of gender dysphoria, and it was the World Transgender Health Organization's guidelines on trans medical care. And he was fired, or there was a political campaign against him, and then he won the lawsuit, which was a libel lawsuit against it. So there is clearly, and this is the thing. Look, I'm not going to convince you. There are people listening. The fact that there is not a political pressure to go along with the gender ideology, and you say, well, there's no evidence of that. It's like, fine. I'm not interested in convincing you. There's enough people who can recognize that's a fact for itself.
Like there's a
and that clearly affects
of different things that this individual Zucker did that would discredit him within a medical field. So for instance, when it comes to him publishing like studies that were later completely recanted without critically examining it, just because he believed in the validity and the legitimacy of the person that forwarded him the study, is one specific, a very strong red flag for specific individuals. Like
in your opinion, sure. It's convenient for you. I know it's convenient for you to label everyone who disagrees with you a conspiracy theorist.
No, they published a study on the basis of, I know this guy, he's cool, and that study ended up being just like academically and like logically utterly flawed. Like it was wrong.
I bet that's bullshit. I bet that's bullshit.
Well,
you're not in a
feel free to look up into the origins of sexual behavior on the conversion therapy study published by Robert Schweitzer, and the reception of that. Can I have a bit to speak? Because
it's
been a long time. All right.
Sure.
So at the end of the day, there is a reason why people who, like myself, are in favor of affirmative models for transgender care can point to studies, can point to medical consensus, can point to existing practices, can point to outcomes in favor of our policies, and why people on the opposing side of that can only point to obscure thought experiments that fundamentally are incredibly detached and have a very simplified view of how like academia works and how it functions, and implies conspiracy when it comes to the publishing and the mediation of the type of literature that exists, without providing any substantiation for that either. When it comes to the truth of the matter in regards to puberty blockers, they have been used for decades and decades now, and are by no means an experimental form of treatment. Absolutely, because it is a new field of study, we should encourage as much literature and as much research as we possibly can within these fields in order to make the most informed decisions. However, the way by doing that is by basing further improvements, further policy experimentation, and further practices on existing literature, and seeing the outcomes that we're able to, see off of that. And the solution is not to point or imagine a potential hypothetical issue with the research, such as, for example, Lisa Littman has done in hers, and basing our research off of that. And yeah, that's going to be my fairly brief closing on this, I guess.
I don't think that I did a good enough job of going through the studies and looking at these empirically. And I want to say it up front, but let me say this. I think Rose genuinely wants trans people to do well, and advocates for this, because I imagine he knows trans people, and I imagine that he wants to reduce stigma around it. And one of the ways of doing that is by pointing to the literature, which does exist. The reason I brought up the cigarette analogy, and we can laugh and say, it's so obvious in hindsight. It's like, well, giving children puberty blockers, of which there is no long-term study that indicates that those children who go through puberty blockers then don't desist or then don't have long-term effects. There are no long-term studies upwards of 5 years on children who have I've gone through these treatments.
How do we get that data? Killer question. How do we get that data?
What?
How do we get that data?
What do you mean? How do we get by doing? Again, and this is the fundamental point. You act like it's not. You act like there's like you are divorced enough from this issue where you can just say, well, this is what the evidence says. This is what the studies say as of date. Not acknowledging that you know full well that in the future new studies could come up and will likely come up, given what we know about, hey, maybe we shouldn't inject a 12-year-old with hormone changes. We
haven't even talked about hormone replacement therapy. Why is this being brought up? This is the second time.
You got to stop interrupting me.
Man.
Whether it's double mastectomies, whether it's puberty blockers, whether it's hormones, any of those treatments, it seems self-evident that when a 12-year-old says, hey, I feel like I'm a different sex, we should not automatically acquiesce and say, well, we're going to do this. And you say, well, there are studies that say that haven't proven any conclusive negative effects of that. And it's like, fair enough. Rose, you want to operate in the realm of the only way to make truth claims is if there are evidence research studies based on it. I think that's a strong way to do that, obviously. And I think the Lisa Littman study is as methodologically flawed as any other study he wants to put forward in the same susceptibilities. But the point is like, you do not have to bear the consequences of you being wrong on this. And as soon as the literature comes out and says, oh, well, it turns out that it was actually wrong to give 12-year-olds chemical castrating hormones or performing double mastectomies, you can say, well, now the literature says otherwise. And in the meantime, there are plenty of detransitioners, plenty of people who will be harmed in that regard because it was self-evident that says, well, wait a second, it's probably not a good idea to do this. And the fact that there are institutions saying it, well, we're just going to go with what the institution said. It's like, that's fine. You can do that. And, again, hindsight's 2020. Cigarettes are obviously bad now. But this was 1946, Journal of American Medical Association said extensive scientific studies have proved that smoking does not appreciably shorten life. And my point is that all the studies that you are referencing fall exactly under that same level of, well, again, there's no long-term studies on children. The mean age for all of these is upwards of 35, 40, 50. You have not produced one study, and I don't think you can.
Have you ever heard me argue for SRS surgery and people that are 12 years old? Yes or no?
I don't think so.
Okay, so then why are you bringing up that as a point in your closing statements?
Because that's part of the gender affirming
your
care
whole
model.
argument is just a really broad thing, but that's all right, I guess. This is why I like interrupting, because it's like a million of those tiny things which aren't relevant.
The gender affirming care model includes that.
The gender affirming care model includes SRS for 12-year-olds.
Hold on. Do you disagree that double mastectomies have been performed on 12-year-olds and that they're published in the Journal of American Medicine?
Is it part of the existing mainstream affirmative care model?
That they're happening? Yes.
Is it part?
What does that mean? They're happening. I don't care if you're just saying in the abstract. Wait, do you disagree that it's happening? Do you disagree that there are 12-year-olds who are getting double mastectomy surgery? Because I'll show you the studies.
The studies. All right. Send me a study. Go.
Do you disagree with that?
I would like to see evidence. I'm going to remain agnostic until I'm presented with evidence. That's typically
good call. Good call.
Yeah, send me the study.
Okay. I'll post it. I'll post it in the Discord too afterwards. That says that under the age of 13.
Go. Send it to me my way. I'm going to give this a read while Brittany does her thing.
Rose, are you in the Discord?
No. Didn't your Discord get nuked or something?
Like 3 times. But we're back. We're coming back
right.
strong.
Hey, send me that study, by the way. I'm waiting for it right now. I have my
I'm doing it right now.
All right, cool. I'm ready.
I did just drop the Discord link. Should I start getting to the Q&A, guys?
Yes.
All right. From Pseudo9.
You sent me the
I sent the wrong one. Sorry. I know I sent the wrong one.
Right,
Hold on. I'll send you the right one.
Do kids see their kids as friends? And I think he wrote a clarification. He meant parents. Do parents see their kids as friends? What goes in the head of parents that accepting kids' needs to transition rather their need to smoke or drive if mature?
All right. Do kids see their kids as friends?
Yeah. He wrote a clarification about parents.
For parents, yeah.
Yeah. So
what goes in the head of parents accepting kid need to transition rather than need to smoke or drive? I am quite unsure about what this question is saying.
Too.
Do kids see their kids as
parents
see their kids as friends? I don't know.
Yeah, if you want to go ahead. Sorry.
I just sent Rose the study. Look at tables and figures.
Take a look at this.
Can I screen share, Brittany? Is that possible?
Yeah, sure.
Screen share.
Okay.
Is it working?
Yep.
Age at chest. So this is 2018 chest reconstruction and chest dysphoria in transmasculine minors. We really should have been sharing the screens on all these anytime we talk about studies. Age at chest surgery in the I was wrong. It's not 12. It's 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So as of now,
okay, so there's that. That's point number one. Point number two. So 13 to 25. That's a lot broader range than you saying 12-year-olds, which isn't even.
I asked you if do you believe that there are 13-year-olds and 12? I should have said 13-year-olds undergoing chest surgery.
Very clear. The question I asked you was: is this is part of like the mainstream affirmative care model for transgender individuals? This is specifically a study designed with specific people. Going into this experiment in order to like demonstrate and measure the effects of it. This is not part of the overall existing model for the thing. This is published in the journal of
published in the Journal of American Medical Association.
Do you understand the difference between an experimental practice and like a default practice?
Apparently not.
Okay, so an experimental practice, you take a specific number of candidates and you study them specifically and you measure the outcomes. And then from that research, you take a look at that and see how you might incorporate that.
Now I understand. Let me interrupt. Do you agree that this is immoral? Do you agree that this is fucked up?
I mean, I'm sorry. Yes, I agree with you. Science is fucked up. Okay.
You agree that that's not what I'm asking. You agree that this is fucked up?
Look, for any type of, okay, hold on. It's going to sound like I'm dodging the question, but I promise I'm going to bring it back. For any type of medical studies on children, it's going to be fucked up. But if we don't do it, then our ability to substantially care for children who suffer from a number of different medical difficulties is going to be significantly hampered. So while, yes, I would agree with you that I would prefer a world in which we had the current knowledge we have, but we didn't have to run trials on kids in order to get that information, to one in which we did. But at the end of the day, we still need to recognize that these trials are necessary in order to be able to develop sustainable care models for young individuals.
So you agree that double mastectomies performed on 14-year-olds is a necessary thing in this world? You think
it doesn't seem to be necessary? No, because the findings of the studies seem to indicate that the outcomes didn't seem to be positive, which is why the affirmative care model that exists currently doesn't do mastectomies for 13-year-olds.
Wait, the outcomes were...
Outcomes and measures. Outcomes were chest dysphoria composites range, and all participant desire for chest surgery in patients who had not had surgery, and regret about surgery and complications for surgery in patients who were post-surgical. Chest dysphoria was high among pre-surgical transmasculine youth, and surgical intervention positively affected both minors and young adults. Given these findings, professional guidance and treatment should be considered giving so they should consider them based on the findings of the study. So if the study...
Where are you reading that?
Conclusions and relevance. I read out the conclusion here. Chest dysphoria was high among pre-surgical transmasculine youth, and surgical intervention positively affected both minors and young adults. Given these findings, professional guidelines and clinical practice should consider patients for chest surgery based on individual need rather than chronologic age.
And sorry, I wasn't really listening. I was looking at the table over here. Sorry, my bad. This table indicates that
that the outcomes were negative. Did you read the conclusion before sending this to me?
Read it again. This study was undertaken to see if chest reconstruction diminishes chest dysphoria, and it should be considered a medically. Additionally, in providing data, we hope to inform future revisions existing guidelines. It doesn't say that it was where does it say it was a negative outcome?
No, there wasn't a negative outcome. If you go to the abstract and you read I was reading the main outcomes and measures previously, because sometimes they label their conclusions wacky, but lower down there is a thing that says conclusions and relevance. Chest dysphoria was high among pre-surgical transmasculine youth, and surgical intervention positively affected both minors and young adults. Given these findings, professional guidelines and clinical practice should consider patients for chest surgery based on individual need rather than chronologic age.
Right. Given these findings, and should consider rather than Hold on. Chest dysphoria was high among, and surgical intervention positively affected both minors and young adults. So this study concluded that double mastectomies on children at 13 were positive. Mm-hmm. Right. And look at this table, the length of time since surgery in which they analyzed whether or not that was actually true. Most of them were under 2 years. Mm-hmm. Gender dysphoric people or detransitioners often don't come out till 5 years later. So what this indicates to me is that we are running medical experiments. We're cutting off the breasts of 13, 14, 15-year-olds, and then saying that it's successful because 2 years later they were happy. We know the effects of testosterone, up mood, and all of these. And I think most people on the surgery were under the effects of testosterone. And there's other studies that concluded that we can't actually make generalizations about the mental health of trans people because we didn't account for the confounding effect of testosterone. So this is my problem. This is everything boils down to this. This study, cutting off the breasts of children, 13, 14, 15, and then concluding it was positive for them when they only followed up 2 years later. And a lot of detransitioners don't realize that it was a mistake until 5 years later. And that's exactly how smoking worked. Smoking doesn't cause cancer until 20 years later. And your inability to say, well, this is what the study concluded. I'm asking you to look at this with your own mind and make your own conclusions.
Mm-hmm. Have you read through the limitations section of the study? So they specifically said that the sample size and the results they take aren't.
Yep. Every study has limitations. Yep. Like the least exactly. Study. Good point.
So then typically if you're going to make something part of like a mainstream, like affirmative care model, you should seek to ensure that there is like as few limitations as possible when it comes to the outcomes, right?
Okay.
So maybe that's a reason why you don't see like mastectomies just generally being done by like
in the broadest sense, and Brittany, maybe we can wrap up here. Do you think that
trying to do that a while ago?
I know, sorry, I'm an asshole. Do you think that this study taking place was a net positive for society?
I think any form of like academic literature is probably beneficial as long as you take it for what it actually means and you don't extrapolate things that it doesn't say. Yeah.
Okay.
Am I leaving this on screen or are we done with it?
Sorry. Yeah, we're done with it.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Wait, do you disagree with that, by the way?
Yes, I think experimenting on children is not good for those children.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a simple question. How could we ever be sure that like chemotherapy is something that could be beneficial for children with cancer? How could we ever ensure? How could we ever even like figure that out without running chemotherapy trials on children?
That's a worthless analogy because chemotherapy is used to stop cancer, which we know cancer kills children. So alternative to.
And we know that discrimination towards transgender individuals and gender dysphoria kills individuals.
We know that 80% of children who experience gender dysphoria desist and become gay. And that's Kenneth Zucker, that's Marty Helson, that's Ray Blanchard. I
would like to see that study as well, because if I'm familiar with it,
I will post all of this in the Discord.
All right. It would have been very beneficial to have all of this.
I know, and I realized we had share screen capacity this whole time, and I am.
Also, cancer doesn't like always kill everybody, always, right? There's instances where it doesn't. So how do you know?
Sure.
How would you know ever that like the chemotherapy that's like young individuals' immune systems just have an adverse reaction to chemotherapy and they will just like die like so much?
If a child has
if
a child has a cancer that we know has like a 95% fatality rate, which is not even in the same boat as a child who experiences gender dysphoria, which desists.
Even if it's a cancer with like a low mortality rate. Should we not test and see?
I don't know. If there's a 5% chance fatality rate, maybe it's not a good idea to go on chemotherapy. And I'm pretty sure there's FDA approval.
So you're fine with just like 5% from that point forward of kids who get the disease. We're just out. Well, fuck you. You're just gonna die, I guess. Like we're just fine with that.
Yes. That's actually been my position this whole time.
All right. So you like I suppose prioritize the lives of like specific,
not running experimental treatments.
They could have positive or negative
outcomes. Not running
the
experimental
5%
treatments
of all like forward coming children with that specific condition.
Not running experimental treatments on children that we have no conclusive studies for, and there's no reason to assume that it's as fatal as cancer in any way.
All right. Well, yeah, I guess that fuck kids then in your world. Jesus Christ, that'd be a rough world to live in. I'm happy I'm soon turning 18 then. Jesus Christ.
Yes. Well, good luck not getting a double mastectomy.
I'll try my best.
Said for Jung is gender choice or chosen for you. Why is 18 cut off?
18 is, I agree, it's somewhat arbitrary because 18 we just say that you're an adult and you can make all these decisions, which there's kind of an element of arbitrariness to that. Any age barrier is going to have some arbitrary element to it. But is gender a choice? I mean, your sex is not a choice, and the way that you express yourself is a choice. So there are feminine men and there are masculine men. That doesn't make them not men.
This trans woman, do they like? Shoot, okay, whatever. That's a little bit.
So
The next one looks spicy. Give me it. Throw it back up.
I saw
Go.
a start.
I'm ready.
we gotta pop on.
Throw it up.
All right, from not racist Dingo.
Hey,
buddy.
how you
What's your
doing, Brittany?
question, Dingo?
Nothing much. I just want everybody to know here that I am not racist. It's in the name.
Definitely not racist.
What's up, Black Todd?
Stop it. Okay.
What's up, homie?
Oh
What?
my
Stop
God.
what? Todd calls me
What's
like
your question,
he calls me
Dingo?
like Mayo Monkey or something like that. doesn't he?
Mayo
What's your
monkey.
I love that.
question?
Yes. No,
What's your question?
My question is for Mr. Rose Wrist. Do you accept or like what kind of feeling do you have to generalities like in general?
Generalities in general.
Yeah.
I think that in some contexts generalities are useful, and so in other contexts they're not useful. I'm sorry, that was a boring answer, but it's the correct answer.
No, it's a good answer. Thank you. Okay, so it's not. I've seen you reject a lot of generalities here today. Like so,
But I've
you
also
even went so
accepted quite a
far.
few.
You even went so far as to reject generalities in the treatment of cancer, right? Because like not all cancers kill all kids, so therefore we can't really deduce anything about radiation. That's kind of what I got from the last thing you said.
It's more like cancer isn't one uniform thing, right? I was like that.
Right, but is it generally bad?
Yeah, cancer is generally bad.
Does radiation generally work?
Well, it depends on what type of radiation we're talking about here and who it's being, thrown upon. So, for instance, there might be specific individuals who might have like specific underlying conditions that radiation therapy can exacerbate to a very harmful degree. So it depends on the
I got you. Well, is racism generally bad?
Yeah, racism is generally bad. You fucking got him, dude. Holy shit.
What?
Yeah.
What is
The
happening?
singers
I mean,
that we have coming up
listen,
here.
this guy will sit here and deconstruct like the most effective way that we've come across.
Can you
as
give
human
me an
beings to
example
fight
of positive
cancer.
racism?
You'll
Not racist dingo.
deconstruct. You'll
Not racist
deconstruct
dingo. What's an
cancer
example of
treatment.
I
positive
don't think it's
racism?
worth engaging.
No, I want to know. Not racist dingo. Give me an example of positive racism. Go.
Okay, I'll tell you this. People who are racist tend to suffer a lot less interracial crime attacks because they know exactly where to stay away from. They tend to stay away from groups of people who are not in their homogenous group. Like whenever you avoid other races, you avoid interracial crime. And
What do you think is the aggregate effect of that individual having that belief on society? Do you think the aggregate effect of that is positive or the aggregate effect of that is negative?
Just staying away from other races? I don't see how it could be negative.
Well, typically racism doesn't just manifest in a single faceted way, right? So this may be expressing, for instance, their voting patterns, for instance, if they hold those types of beliefs where they want to stay away from specific groups of people just because they're incredibly racist. And those types of policies that people would vote for on the virtue of them being racist would probably be, policies that would severely undermine.
No.
the
Do you
civil
have a
rights
study
and
to prove that,
liberties
though?
of
No, I
black
want to see your study to prove that racism
Yeah,
is bad.
No,
let's-
this is
let's-
a Q&A,
alright.
so
Yeah, sorry,
that's
let's-
the question.
Why
Yeah,
are you both shooing me?
Bye. Love you, Dingo, but
Fucking
terrifying.
got me with that one, damn. Holy shit. I wasn't prepared for that
alright,
absolute
we're
banger.
Yeah.
That was him being well behaved, you guys. So, all right, back to the Q&A. So,
I want
from,
more of you guys, okay?
No.
If you guys are all as smart as that guy, please, hop on. I'm ready.
so from Cannon Rye, is a coin flip binary or bimodal?
Well, technically, there is a possibility for it landing on the very side, so it's probably bimodal.
But it's effectively binary.
Sure, if you want to be non-scientific about it, go for it. But if you're having scientific discussions, I think it's worth to be.
We're
as
not
accurate
having
as
we're
possible.
having we're having intelligent discussions, which are not the same thing as
it's so
purely
sad that when we
scientific
talk about like
discussions.
intersectionalism, we need to be like hyper specific with everything, and we can never deal with any like generalities or whatever. But as soon as we talk about
Okay.
anything else that requires
Right.
accurate labeling, then fuck
Okay.
it, it's effectively
Great.
this.
These are okay. Great.
It's a banger analogies. Okay.
Yeah. Solid.
All right. So from hypnotized to Rose West, do you agree that children should be able to transition at the age of 14 without parental consent? It's being discussed in Scotland.
Well, that depends on what they mean by transitioning. Do they mean surgery? Do they mean hormone replacement therapy? Do they mean puberty blockers? Do they mean legal classification? Do they mean socially transitioning? It's a very like broad question there, so to say.
How about let's just pick one. How about hormone therapy?
No, HRT, probably not a good idea to do with people above like the medical age of consent. No.
What? Okay. Good call.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, I know you would probably be surprised because
Well, I
you said
was,
like
'cause
3
you
times
said
that I'm
that-
in favor of
Right,
HRT to like young people.
Well,
so.
you said that the study that was cutting off 13-year-olds' breasts said was a net positive. So I'm surprised you went back and
hold
changed
on,
that.
saying that study, the existence of that study is probably positive as a whole is a very different
Yeah.
claim from saying that
Yes.
we should let kids do HRT. I don't know.
Sure.
I need to explain why that's
Yeah.
different, but
Oh, they claimed that they were talking about the question was at age 4, but no, you wrote 14.
Well,
But,
I don't know what the fuck that would even look like, but
Yeah.
yeah. All right. So next question is from 14235. 2 rows. What's your take on neopronouns? If you don't need dysphoria to be trans, does that mean identifying as a vampire is totally as valid as identifying as the opposite sex?
So first of all, okay, never mind. Let's not go there. So when it comes to like the vampire and the attack helicopter and shit like that, these are. I'm sorry to all the aspiring TikTok vampires. I've seen all the TikToks of the little kids in class. And, oh, my teacher doesn't accept that I need to go out and drink from my blood veil every 15 minutes. I've seen all those TikToks. I'm sorry, but vampire is not gender. So hey, maybe at some point when we develop a tertiary aspect to the masculine and feminine, we have like vampirian, and we societally recognize. Sure, fucking maybe go for it.
Are you saying that jokingly, or are you saying that seriously?
No, I'm being serious. Well, about the vampire thing, no, I'm joking.
But if tertiarily we came up with something else,
I mean, if we societally decided to like recognize the third gender, then yeah, fuck it.
Vampires.
Well, that's a bit of a silly example, but if we did,
I agree, it's a very silly example.
Yeah, but if we did societally recognize another genders, like man, woman, some other shit, then I mean, if we all recognize them equally, then
All right, we got another pop-on question. All right, overthinker, hit us with it.
Oh, hey, I have a question for Rose. Now, I don't think that putting on a dress, cutting off your genitals, and demanding everyone calls you a she makes you a woman. I don't believe that. So please change my mind. How am I wrong? Why should I consider that person a woman when they were born a man?
Oh, fuck, there's like, I would have to give you a whole ass course on that. I can go through as much as possible right now, but if there's like contestations, which there's definitely going to be, there's no way we're gonna have enough time for this. But basically, I can get through this fairly simply. So number one, you need to like accept or understand like a distinction between sex and gender in this. So sex has to do with your physiological traits when it comes to like where you fall on the male and female bimodal distribution. Gender has to do with what social categorizations and behaviors you express and you identify as. So by that logic, you aren't like assigned, or you aren't born a man or a woman. These are social roles that a person of any sex can fill, really. You are assigned a sex at birth, however. So you saying that this person was born a man, I mean, yeah, sure, that's the gender you would be like assigned, by at birth, but it's by no means something that is inherent to you as a person or to your biology or anything of the sort. So therefore, if one decides to, like express and identify as a woman, for example, in this instance, then there is, there's nothing faulty with them identifying with the social, roles of women and expressing therefrom. So,
well,
yeah.
If that's the case, that gender is a social construct separate from sex, then I think it should stay a binary. It should be rigid if that's the case, because no, I do not accept that putting on a dress makes you a woman, even if you really feel you're a woman.
Mm-hmm. So when it comes to the stuff that you're talking about, I was going to bring this in earlier a bit, but we never really got to that point. You're right. There's no objective metric for at what point one individual expresses sufficient amount of gendered characteristics for them to be labeled as one specific gender on the other when it comes to like the gender presentation side of things. So for instance, which one of these are more masculine or more feminine or more gendered? Is it wearing high heels or wearing a muscle shirt? Is it having, short hair, or is it painting your nails? There's no objective metric by which you say, okay, this one contributes more to femininity than this one does to masculinity. So therefore, what seems to make most sense, and that can vary by person as well, is to allow people to, express given, their social and gendered expression that they wish to do. And then depending on the way that they interpret those things and how much they contribute into their notions of masculinity or femininity, identify, therefrom. And that's probably the best way to ensure that the identification and the labeling of individuals is as accurate as possible, because there's no way to objectively say what level of gendered expression is sufficiently masculine or sufficiently
feminine. So it's all relative. It's all up to the individual. Well, I just question the motivations of people who really get hung up on gender norms. I, as a right winger.
Mhm.
So yeah, but no, I will never consider such a person a woman ever.
Right, and they shouldn't
Alright.
be in female prisons. They shouldn't be in
Yeah,
female
yep,
sports,
100%
which
agree.
makes them not women. So you
Oh,
can
and-
laugh and say that
No,
that's
now we're bringing about different things. No, now we're talking about
you
physiology.
get
Now we're
you
talking
do that a
about
lot. You
sex.
go,
Now we're
"Ah,
talking about other
Hey,
stuff.
it matters.
Like
It's
when you're
relevant.
Now
caught.
we're talking about other stuff, man. Now we're talking
Yes,
about
life is
like
full of other
and
stuff.
one
sex-oriented
more
stuff
thing
and physiognomy stuff.
one more thing I think giving children puberty blockers is immoral. I think it's just evil. I don't think
All right,
they
well,
should
that's
be
a good
put on
argument,
that.
buddy.
All right,
Thanks for coming on.
You should have helped out PF because that was a banger argument. Would have laid me flat on my
Yeah.
back.
Well,
All right,
Good
next
one.
question. So from wait, did we do these? Oh yeah, we did that one. Okay. All right, from Biking Cat. Do you agree that chemicals can alter gender identity or sex drive? Also, have these chemicals been introduced to our food supply?
Oh no. You know what? Hey, if this person, okay, what this is in reference to, like the Joe Biden
BPAs?
feminizing all men through like
Oh.
estrogen in the water or some shit. That's what this is in reference to.
Joe,
Um,
that's okay.
You know, it's
There-
the
Do you disagree that BPAs are affecting testosterone counts and sperm counts?
There is literally about 1 million different pollutants that exist that adversely
Sure.
affect our hormone processes.
Okay,
It's just-
I haven't come up with the research on this one, but the fact that you laugh at that is like
Wait,
okay.
what? Okay, because the reason why I laugh at it is because that's very specifically in reference to like conspiracy theories that like
Okay,
know,
well,
the
no,
government is
obvious-
like feminizing men or whatever the
no,
fuck, you
it's
know.
fucking side effect of some BPAs. I don't know exactly what they are. They're used in manufacturing of plastics and food packaging. It's not Joe Biden doing it.
Yeah, there's a reason.
But it's
why
definitely
that
affecting
question- There's a
testosterone
reason why
like
the
that.
question was: do you believe that there's different chemicals that can affect gender, identity and like hormone balances that may be pushed in like food supplies?
Yeah.
And wasn't phrased as, "Hey, do you believe that there are chemicals that can adversely affect hormonal like processes within humans?"
Okay,
Obviously,
Mr.
the answer
Mind
to the
Reader. That's an interesting way to read the guy's mind. Who asked the question.
If I was wrong, call me out. If the person who made that comment, I don't know if you probably know where they were, Brittany, but if they correct me and say that I'm wrong, then I'll take the L on that one. But it definitely seems
Sure.
like they were
Well,
wrong on that one.
if they say Joe Biden's causing it, then they're
Okay, maybe not
doofus.
necessarily Biden, but yeah. We'll see.
Right.
I think you might have answered.
I mean,
this.
we see people in chat, right? Alex Jones was right about it. And
Yeah, exactly. The turn the freaking frogs gay. No.
Yeah, see, that's what I mean. All right, but keep going.
All right. So from I think you might have answered this one already, but I'll just ask you again.
I'll do it again.
From Squatting Squaw for Rosarist, should children be able to get transgender surgery?
It seems like there doesn't exist like a suitable amount of research that SRS is you should be general practice among people below the age of medical consent. So no, probably not.
But the survey we looked at the end said that it was successful for children who were 13 or 14 or 15 years old.
That study also talked about extremely specific like limitations from the sample size.
Every study has a limitations thing in it. Find me a study that doesn't have
hold on.
limitations.
You realize
That's what I'm talking
that
about.
even though all studies have limitations, the
There's always an
limitations
out.
vary in extent, and this is why you
I agree with
necessarily
that.
need to apply a great amount of nuance. And this is why, for instance, you and I, especially no, I'm kidding. But this is the reasons why you and I, for instance, it's harder for us to go through this and draw suitable policies from it. And this is why we trust medical institutions and accredited professionals to go through the literature and read in between the lines and look at the nuances of them specifically.
Yep.
And then from there, form a suitable policy platform by which to treat this given like medical condition or whatever.
And when reputable doctors disagree, then it's left up to us.
Do you believe that there is a comparable amount of like disagreements within the or like, there is
I
there's
have
a
every reason to
significant
believe
amount
that.
of disagreement? Okay, well, sure.
Okay.
I'd be excited for that reason. But...
Yeah, well, you'll see in a few years. Trust me.
All right. This is coping.
So, all right. So from 14235 to both, how would you feel if your child came out as trans? Would you accept it?
I would be deeply distressed if I had someone walk up to me and say that they're my child and that they're trans at my age. So you know what? Hey,
That's good.
that'd be a bit.
I'm in the same boat, actually.
I mean, obviously, if I did have a kid and if they came out as trans, then I mean, obviously, like, what was the question? If I would accept them or whatever?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, obviously.
Yeah, I would too. I would not recommend that they get their breasts cut off at age 13.
Well, lucky that's not part of the mainstream affirmative action model, then, huh?
Not yet.
Unrelated Como would like to know what kind of dog.
What kind of dog do I have? I'm watching my friend's dog. It's an Australian Shepherd named Cash.
Oh shit, that's cool.
Okay. Let's see here.
Hey, buddy.
Hey. Doggy. All right. So from Rapture Jesus for PF Jung, so it says, does PF Jung truly think that a survey on an online site where anyone could submit a survey is equal to, for example, any survey or study conducted by experts?
No, and that study by Lisa Littman was approved by an internal review board from the Icahn School of Medicine. So unless Rose has special insight and knows people that knows what the internal review
what do you
board
think that
process
approval
is.
meant? I'm curious. Do you think that approval meant that that survey was an accurate understanding of whether or not rapid onset gender dysphoria exists? Or do you believe that that approval was approving the existence of a study documenting the attitudes of certain parents on the the transitionary process of their children?
The second, obviously.
Okay, cool. So that by no means proves at all anything in relation to the existence of rapid onset gender dysphoria.
For the 500th time, there are no studies that prove conclusively one way or the other, which is why
it's not. It does not that doesn't prove conclusively. That it doesn't even reach the doorstep of proving anything. That's the
in your opinion.
Okay, sure. You know what? Hey, I just hope science is filled with more people like me and less people like you, I guess.
Maybe there'd be more children with their breasts cut off at 13, but we'll see.
I don't know how many.
Go ahead. It's what we're fucking messing around.
But I'm not in favor of teenagers getting SRS. But it seems like I need to read
studies that
17
conclude
million times.
If the studies change it, then it's good to experiment when needed. So,
from G. Sneed to Rose. If medical professionals almost all said that lobotomies were the right thing, don't we need something more to conclude what's okay?
This is a very silly question because what the fuck does the right thing mean for what specifically? I mean, we would fundamentally need to exist in a completely different universe in which cause and effect doesn't function in the same way that we know that it does today. So it's a world beyond my comprehension. You're right, Chatter. You fucking got me to consider something that is beyond my field.
I don't understand these reactions from you. You laugh as if that wasn't a real thing. Do you know the history of lobotomy, right? You know that we say it now.
I do. I also know that since then our academics standards for most things has gone through the fucking roof. We have the greatest prevalence of stuff like peer review, of stuff like institutions working together to affirm the validity of their research.
Internal review boards.
Of things like scientific and if you say internal review, okay, because when you say that, because when you say internal review boards, it sounds like you're trying to use that to prove the original statement you made.
You have great faith in institutions that have proven not necessarily to have be completely reliable. And when there is allowed,
so since then we have had better academic standards, we have more peer review, we have more technology and tools available at our hands to get good conclusions. We have unprecedented collaboration between medical institutions all across the world. We exist in fundamentally a completely different, I suppose, almost universe in terms of the validity and the credibility of academic literature.
That's
between now and
maybe, or because institutions are still run by people who have their biases and susceptibilities, it's actually the same. And there's incentives and motivations behind it, and the studies are.
Was I wrong with anything I just said? Any of the examples that I pulled up of ways we've improved?
You said
are any of those false?
Yes, you said we're in a fundamentally different world right now, which is completely wrong because the same.
What about the 5 things I said previously? Sure, of course. Do you concede that those things?
Do we have better technology than 1940? Part of the reason I'm kind of being fucking chippy to you is because you ask these dumbass questions. Do we have different technology from 1940? No, I don't know. It's like Jesus Christ, dude.
Do you believe we have the other stuff that I mentioned as well?
We have another pop on. Just make sure that you don't break any TOS. So, original Greek, what's your question?
Hello, how are you doing, Brittany?
Hi.
Okay, nice to speak to you. I wanted to ask your guest if they had heard about the knockout game.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Yeah, I've heard about it.
What's the knockout game?
I don't know what this is.
It was a phenomenon in America back in.
Oh my god, is this Dingo or something that's just fucking with us?
It sounded like
No, I can explain what it is if we want to know. It's like
Who are you?
No, they're back.
Why do you keep booting me, Britt?
I told you, I'm fucking right.
If you guys are this scared about this person coming on, then they probably should be on.
What the fuck?
I'm right about the other one too. Got him.
Right,
It's not me. That was not me. That was Dingo again.
God. That was kind of funny. All right. All right. So from Java Bolt to PF, what evidence would convince you that puberty blockers increase well-being if no study will convince you?
Sorry, that was to me.
Yeah.
What study will convince me that puberty blockers? Sorry, repeat it one more time.
Oh, okay. Hold on. I
Sorry.
just deleted it, so let me undo that. All right. So, what evidence would convince you that puberty blockers increase the well-being if no study will convince you?
Well, I would treat it the same way that Rose talked about chemotherapy. It's like there are children who have an issue, gender dysphoria. We have a couple different options to treat it, and if an experimental treatment that we know that the long-term effects are that there are significant long-term risks. I guess I don't really understand the question in terms of like, there's no reason to be giving children puberty blockers if we know that the gender dysphoria persists at the rate that they do. So it's not like chemotherapy versus cancer. If a child is for sure going to die, that's why we have experimental treatments. If we knew a child was going to die if they didn't get their puberty blockers, then, you know, have at it, I guess. But
that's the standard.
nonsense.
So we can't have any forms of like medical improvements among young people unless they're literally going to die unless they don't take it.
Okay, Dingo, I'll bring you back on.
Wait, can I
What do you say? What?
Because it seemed like you set the standard at we should only try new medical procedures on children if they're like
if the cure is worse than the ailment.
But how do we know if the cure is worse than the ailment?
Oh my God! This is why you support cutting off the breast at 13. Well, we don't know that it's going to have a negative effect. Okay,
well,
fine.
Hold on. No,
Sit in
I
your
have
world.
not argued.
It's called logic. Maybe
okay.
we shouldn't
give
common
13-year-olds.
I know you laugh like that's not self-evident, but every single person who has any sense would go, you know what? Giving testosterone or puberty blockers or things that we know have long-term effects on children maybe isn't a good idea, especially if it's the child deciding, you know, I feel like I'm a different sex and I want to delay puberty until I can become a transgender adult. It's like, okay, cool. We don't have any evidence that says no.
Yeah, you're right, man. If we lived in the fucking 1700s, it would be completely laughable to believe that you couldn't just get a completely like clean, you know, body wash by standing up in the middle of a field, you know, stood up naked there.
Yeah, that's definitely relevant to what I said, but sure.
Right,
yeah.
So basically,
sorry, go ahead. I'm gonna give him one more chance though. But if you want to finish your sentence, and then I can bring it back on.
Yeah, the statement that it's experimental is fairly like it's missing a lot of nuance there. We have seen the like puberty blockers being used on like, you know, prepubescent people. That's kind of the only point of them existing for, you know, like literal decades now. What people have done when it comes to applying them to the you know, to the treatment of transgender youth is that you've leaned on the existing literature that existed on the you know, existence and on the effects of puberty blockers, and medical experts who have you know, significant experience within this field and can make you know, informed decisions have decided that at the moment, given the large, you know, like, you know, multiple decades amount of research we have right now on the effects of puberty blockers, it stands to reason that the effects of this on, you know, young people is probably going to be beneficial. Now, you know, given that this, you know, is occurring currently and that we'll get more research, we can probably amend them. But the risk right now of us seeing like massive issues in the future with individuals, you know, with the negatives of puberty blockers outweighing the benefits seems exceedingly unlikely based on the research we have right now and based on the you know, the medical experts that are encouraging that as a treatment.
And I would just clarify real quick. There are some cases where puberty blockers, even Ken Zucker, who you said was a bit terrible because he cited some bullshit reason why he's not good anymore. He's prescribed puberty blockers for children. So there are some instances where the problem is the affirmative care model states that any 13-year-old who comes in and says they're the other gender can then be prescribed puberty blockers.
Well,
that's the problem.
Not true either. You need to get a diagnosis of gender dysphoria before you get access to that treatment in the vast majority of places.
All right.
No.
Bingo.
Okay. Fucking go.
It's just a Q&A. So.
Yeah. That claim is. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'll look at that.
Bingo.
Hi, Brittany.
Hi, Dingo.
Okay. I'm not going to say anything bad. I don't know why you keep kicking me. I've never broken terms of service on your show before. I'm not gonna. Okay, but I did notice that both of the guests, like maybe 10 minutes ago, they laughed off the claim about the frogs being gay, right?
See,
Like it was
I told you.
It was absurd. Yeah. See. Okay.
No,
Mr. Slug,
I
Slug
laughed
guy.
off the fact the Biden thing that Biden is doing it.
Right.
It's
I mean, I
Biden,
did.
it's the
I sent
CIA,
Brittany.
it's the
I sent
Illuminati,
Brittany
it's
an
the
article about it. I sent
Yeah.
Brittany an article about it. It's actually worse than turning them gay. It actually turns up to 75% of frogs who are exposed to this very commonly used, what's it called, a pesticide, turns them from male to female. So, like, I just want you to think about things that you laugh all. Like, look, you're laughing. It's a study. You love studies. Don't
I
you
just
want
put
to
it,
go
I
over
put the
this
link
study?
in the chat.
Like, it's a real thing. This happens.
Yes.
And you laughed at it. So I would
Yes.
just say, like, maybe
To
next
his-
time somebody
to his
says something
point-
that you find, hang on, maybe next time somebody says something that you find absurd and you want to laugh at it, maybe just listen for a second because you could be wrong.
Right. To his point, it's not Biden or the CIA putting shit in our water.
It's
but
the same.
Will you let me finish?
It was
It's just a
Obama. No, I'm just
variation.
kidding.
Whatever. But the fact that there are chemicals in our food processing packages and all of that affect testosterone accounts and affect hormone imbalances, nobody disputes that. You're a conspiracy theorist if you do.
Is anyone on this panel disputing that?
You laughed at it. Kind of implies it, doesn't it?
I laughed at it because it's the part of the conspiratorial narrative on the.
Even though it's
Biden
correct, you can laugh
specifically.
at it because it's lumped in by the populace into something bad.
Well,
makes no
no, not
sense, dude.
specifically. So I made like a.
All right,
well,
I'm done with my
nobody-
question.
nobody
Thanks, Brittany.
disputes
See you
it.
later.
Nobody disputes it.
Bye. All right, so let me get back to these. All right, so I think this might be the last question we have, and it's a long one. Okay, so
What happened
this
to that
is-
spicy one with the emote?
With the Star
Which
of
one?
David. Yeah.
I saw a Star of David pop up there, but
Did you? Oh, God.
Yeah.
I told you that is wild, bro. That
Oh
is
my
buck wild.
God. This is definitely him again. He's back with the weird and more something. He's got some weird name. We're closing it down, Dingo.
Yeah, I gotta let my dog out pretty soon. So.
Yeah, so from Neon Reagan, question for both. Does trans medicalism truly, really matter? Can you both tell me if you support gender abolition and if you'd be in favor of getting rid of female and male outside of sex? Because how do you reconcile with the fact that we're trying to build a self-ID genderless earth, but also have people wanting to transition from woman to man? Aren't these people holding us back from progress occurring? This is the problem with Facebook. These questions can be really long.
Should I give that a step, or is that the end of the question?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think this person might be coming from a more left-leaning perspective when it comes to the gender abolitionist thing, and I've heard this argument been stated like a number of different times, like, oh, if we want to move towards a society with a massive reduction in gender roles, aren't transgender individuals holding us back by like resorting to like stereotypes, I suppose, in the way that they would like to be treated and in the way that they, run their, the way that they seek to transition, the way that they seek to express themselves and look like or whatever. And the answer to that is like absolutely not. If you look at the general movement of the transgender movement as a whole, that sect of the LGBT movement has done probably more than any other movement in contemporary political history towards deconstructing gender roles and having a more nuanced perspective on it than any other movement ever has. So overall, the movement has been absolutely positive. Now, the reason behind why that treatment and that type of like expression and the care that we see transgender individuals perform well when received. Why that is necessary right now is because we know that throughout socialization, the way people are socialized today, you build in inherent understandings or I suppose subconscious biases in the way that you perceive these things, and these biases feed into people's understanding of, for instance, gender dysphoria. So it's sort of reinforced therefrom. The solution to that is not to say to all these people who have been heavily socialized into something that is causing them extraordinary mental anguish to be like, well, fuck you, I guess we're going to get a marginal benefit to reducing gender roles in return to you all suffering massively under mental health issues. That's not the way to go through that. Right?
Yeah, you can't abolish gender because it's inextricably linked to sex, and the reason that gender roles are sort of the way they are is because sex affects them. The reason we have this idea that women are more nurturing, it's biologically speaking, psychologically speaking, that is the case. Women score higher in agreeableness than men. Women are less aggressive than men. So yeah, you can't abolish the socially constructed aspect of a biological reality.
To be clear, none of this stuff you just mentioned, necessarily like inherently proves that the vast majority of the reason why there exists such a discrepancy between men and women is because of like inherent biological traits.
Sure.
Okay, so
Nothing
Dingo
proves
swears
anything.
Dingo swears that this isn't him. I'm going to do this last pull up, and then we will do closing statements, and we will be done. All right. So, who are you? Do you have a question?
PF, why do you keep bringing up breast removal surgery for teenagers when Rose has explicitly said several times that he doesn't support that?
I'm sorry. I thought the conclusion was that because the study concluded that there are potentially positive outcomes, that study was a good study. Am I wrong? Was that not a net positive?
Yeah, but why do you keep bringing it up?
Because it's fucked up. And this is the example of experimenting on children. And this is breaking out of the little, we're having a scientific study versus study debate and putting it in perspective. And there are children who are going to commit suicide because of that. And we're saying, well, we're going to do the studies. And people like Rose, who they don't have any skin in the game, can say, until studies come out more, let's say, well, the cutting off children's breasts at 13 probably isn't a good idea. I'm not going to say that this is not something we should do. It's like, okay. So that's why I'm stepping outside of the little back and forth about your study versus my study, because
poor children, man. The rate of there being research on the medical treatments that can be beneficial for them in the long term is going to be severely hampered under your world. So I feel for the children. Yeah, that's what I can say for them.
Yep.
All right. Is that all you had to ask?
Yep.
All right. Thanks for coming on. Not being Dingo. All right. So if you guys want to go into closing statements and final thoughts, Paul, you want to go first?
Sure. Just fun. 3.5 hours later. Look, I'll just be as honest as possible. I think it's fucked up that there are children that are being experimented on. I call it experimented. And I use that term because, again, there are no studies that say, well, the double mastectomy thing, some studies said that they were positive, and they followed up 2 years later and they were positive. It's like, okay, well, we're going to continue these studies. I think that's wrong. I think there are a lot of kids who are going to be on the fallout side of this in terms of, well, I was experimented on. That's what the Kira Bell ruling was. That's what a lot of detransitioners say. And I think there is not much advocacy for detransitioners. And I think all of this gender ideology goes into it, saying that, well, if you feel like a woman, if you feel like a boy, if you abide by these gender stereotypes, that makes you that. And the gender affirming care model, which I don't think Rose Wist has said is not good, says that if a child identifies as a different sex, the therapist is obligated to treat them as such and to convince them that it might be another issue, like maybe they're autistic, as we talked about, has a higher comorbidity rate with gender dysphoria. To even do that is unethical, as per the American Psychological Association. That's wrong. That's fucked up. We are currently in a period where there is medical dispute about the validity of, like, again, puberty blockers. I agree. There certainly is a gradient, and I probably didn't do a good enough job of discriminating between puberty blockers, hormone therapy, and surgery. But to the extreme point about hormone therapy and surgery, let's say, that's fucked up. And it's just, there are kids who have gender dysphoria, and after they go through puberty, they can get surgery, and I think society is obligated to help them do that because it's a legitimate mental illness. And despite what probably some people watching this will think, I genuinely am interested in creating a society where transgender adults can flourish. And, I may not be as sober as I should be in order to make that point. So it's probably on me to be fucking this up. But that's what I believe. And I just think the insistence on, well, this is what the studies say. It's like, yes, that is what the studies say. We can sit here and talk about studies all day. But if you are not willing to go above that and say, put these studies in context, well, then we're exactly in 1946. Well, where the Journal of the American Medical Association said, extensive scientific studies have proved that it does not cause appreciable shortened life. And it's like, okay, if we were in 1946, you would be on the side of saying, well, there were no studies. When other people can say, well, let's think about this. Is fucking smoking and inhaling smoke probably not a good idea? Well, we'll see. So.
Thank you. Rose.
Yeah, I can go for the final pieces on like the historical things first. So, regardless of whether or not something may be intuitive, is a very terrible metric by which to analyze principally like any real like social. It can absolutely serve some value when it comes to an individual's like survivability. So, the pattern recognition brain is a pretty big reason why we are around today. But when it comes to medical procedures and policy procedures, probably not a good idea. So, for instance, if you were to ask an individual before the existence of like radiation therapy, whether or not it would be a good idea to blast an individual with radiation, most people would say, common sense, probably not a fucking good idea, right? However, we know that medicine is way more complicated than common sense, whatever that term may mean, and then, intuition. So those arguments for me hold absolutely no water, and I hope they don't hold any water in the minds of an audience either. When it comes to the constant comparison to 1946 and the legitimacy of scientific literature derived thereof, we are in a completely different academic situation right now than we were back then. We have unprecedented levels of technology that can give more accurate results, of collaborations between types of medical institutions, of peer review practices to ensure that our research is as valid as possible, with transparency and visibility when it comes to the methodology and the practices of studies conducted all around the world, just to name a few of the key like vital, paradigm shifting changes that we have seen within the field of science and academia over the past, almost century since that specific example was used there. Fundamentally, even though I can definitely agree with P.F. Jung that it is an uncomfortable thing, experimenting and trying experimental treatments, probably a less loaded way to say it, on young people is distressing. It 100% is. However, we know as a fact of the matter that it is something that needs to be done in order to ensure that we can achieve an understanding of what works and what doesn't work. So while I understand entirely on an emotional level where this distress is coming from, and I understand that it's warranted, it's, a hard pill to swallow, but it's one that society must swallow if we seek to ensure that our medical treatment is as effective as, as possible. Once again, I don't know why HRT and SRS keeps being brought up when we talk about youth stuff. That has not been anything that I've advocated for at the moment. It seems like typically irreversible changes to an individual's, to an individual's like body and well-being taken below an age of medical consent for a field like transgender care at the moment probably doesn't seem like a good idea. It seems like puberty blockers do fall on the other side of that line though, and seem to be beneficial in something and is a practice that should be encouraged. Once again, I want to hammer this home that the study that both Abigail Schreier and my opponent cited as like the key piece of evidence behind the existence of the rapid onset gender dysphoria among young people is absolutely bogus. Please, if anyone ever sees me use a study with these levels of methodological flaws, like burn me at the stake, unsubscribe from my channel, send me fucking death threats by email, okay? I swear to God, if I ever do something like this, I don't have a job on, or I shouldn't have a platform in the way that I do currently. Yeah, so when it comes to my opinion on this, it seems like there's a strong reason why people on the affirmative side of the argument can point to a wide range of different studies and a wide range of different medical institutions that hold our beliefs, and people on the opposing side can only point to specific authors or specific, like researchers, and no real like broad body of work when it comes to supporting their opinions on the matter. So yeah, I'm generally in favor of the affirmative care. It seems like that's where the research suggests that it's a reasonable way to go from there. Sex and gender are two separate concepts, and it gives us utility in recognizing the difference thereof. There doesn't exist any literature at all to make us believe that there is some forms of social pressure sort of coercing kids into seeking transitionary treatment and developing gender dysphoria. And the research that does, attempt to prove that is absolutely bogus. So yeah, trans rights, and it was a it was a debate, so to say.
I agree.
Well, I got both of their links in the description on the YouTube page. So if you guys want to find out where you can get them, you can go check it out there. We're going to have 2 polls up because there was 2 different topics. So you guys, and the polls are up in the community section on our YouTube page, so you guys can go vote. We also will be posting the end of the week polls. So for those that are not aware of what we're doing, after each week, we will have a poll on the lefties and the righties, and you guys can pick on who you think made the best arguments. At the end of the month, the top 4 from each week, top 1 from each week, but the final 4 of lefties and then the final 4 of the righties, we'll have a poll and you guys can vote for the top debater of the month. So that is what we are doing, and we will, and then maybe we'll have them go up against each other. I don't know yet. But yeah, so that's that. Tomorrow night we'll be back at 9 p.m. Eastern for a vegan debate. We are trying to rebuild our Discord, and we're trying to get some of because we had to cancel a lot of the interviews that we had because of the Discord getting shut down repeatedly. So we'll have to do that. Other than that, I think that is all for now. I will post the schedule up after this as well. But we have some spots available next week, so we're gonna get that going. All right, so that is all, and we'll see you guys tomorrow night. Thank you guys both for coming, and then good night, guys.